So here's where the question began right here. It said YNs can be in the street shooting each other for clout while destroying their communities, but won't join the military for benefits for their own kids and families. And it will never make sense to me. It will never make sense. And the same people that fit this conversation come from where? The village. This is the fruit of the village, not anything else. Because the only place that this is condoned is the village. And what do I mean by condoned? Who's holding anybody accountable for it? They just say that's just the way it is, right? You know how it go. It is what it is. That conversation is dead, man. And this isn't to even convince people that live this life that they have to change. This is for people that are observing and upset at this life and this pattern of thinking and this way of moving. It's time for you to let them go. It is time for you to let this go. This is a failed assignment, bro. If they don't see any problem with their behavior, what are you going to be able to tell them? I know there's a big fantasy in the conversation of black people coming together, but like the only black people that can come together are the ones that are already working together. That's it. And I put my flag on that. You know what I'm saying? The only black people that's going to work together or that's going to come together, the ones that's already working together. And the ones that can't be trusted are the ones that can't be trusted because of how they treat others and their behavior. It don't take much to grade them. Look at how they treat their kids. Look who they make their kids with. And look at how their kids behave. There's been plenty of situations that has come up in recent months in history, especially in just this year, where the children of the YN community are offing each other at school. And parents are blaming teachers for the behavior of children that they raised. I know the parenting is different from the way that we were parented. I understand that. I understand technology is different. I understand the peer pressure groups and all that stuff is different, but I don't care. I don't care. It is not an excuse to be a substandard adult. It is not. And in this conversation that went on, matter of fact, I dropped the conversation in the thread so you guys can catch up too, if you want to follow it or whatever. So we had a pretty in-depth conversation on this because I write way more than I get on video, but sometimes I'm writing because I got to get my thoughts organized first. You know, let me say a few other things on here. Fix this real quick so you guys can see. All right. All right, where was I? Okay, the people that are in position to retire understand exactly what I'm saying. The people that disagree don't plan on retiring on any level. They are going to work until they die. And that's not to say that people that have to work until they die don't care. We're just saying that you get a clearer picture about how society could potentially look if everybody got the right opportunity to separate themselves from things that they can control and things that they can't. Some things you can't get away from, and I understand that. But then when I talk about, again, these guys won't join the military, but they'll shoot each other. They'll hurt each other. They'll put their communities in disrepair and leave their kids to be orphans pretty much, and the next patch of cotton to get plucked. Say you don't want to join the white man's military, but you'll delete your own people and get locked up in a white man's prison. Work that same white man's labor jobs as an inmate in uniform and build the white man's properties and investments with your body as human capital with no benefits while destroying your bloodline. That's insane. And you're the physical manifestation of cotton. You understand that? You're the cotton. And you pick yourself. You pluck yourself when you go out here and hurt your people. They take you to jail and lock you up for hurting your people. That's not a white man's problem. That's our problem. And there's plenty of people. My man Tyrell said, "Yeah, I never understood that logic. Why not join the military and police force that you claim to hate to actually have representation and leverage within those areas? If they hate the current construct so much, why not infiltrate it and influence others to join the system or to change the system? You can't dismantle something that you don't know how it was built. You can't fix something if you don't know how it works. But you can't sit back and complain and think your complaints are going to fix it either. Either leave and be quiet or do something and fix it. So you got people on here saying, hey, the military, shout out to my man, Ronald Trey Brown, said the military changed a lot of people's lives. You know, my friend Alicia Marie said, nah, keep the YNs out. They got to have a chance. Hey, it's up to them once they get in there. You know, and then basic training should be mandatory. Shout out to my man Tyrone Congo man Chapman. Now, this went into a whole nother set of conversations. And before I open this up, let me tell you what I also say. I think, and this is going to sound real controversial. I don't really care. But since ain't nobody else got no solutions and everybody's got an objection, I'm going to say it. I think we need conscription. And for those that do not know what conscription is, it is mandatory military service. Yep. And what I mean is it's it's a compulsory enlistment for state service, typically into the armed forces. Conscription was extended to married men at some point. So I think the young men in our community do not have father figures or any type of matter of fact, I'm just saying like this. If you were born out of wedlock, if your child was born out of wedlock, you are automatically signing your kid up in my world. They automatically are going to the military when as soon as they age. Soon as they are of age. Not ROTC, not just ROTC, because they're going there too. They're going to be on a whole different path. Because if you don't have any men in a man's life as he becomes a man from boyhood, he's cotton. Yep, he's cotton. There's too many examples of men that I've seen who were raised without their fathers that actually joined the military and it shaped their outcomes. And I see it in their families. I see it in their children. You know what I'm saying? And they thank the military for setting them up for success. And part of the logic on this is that at some point, let's just say you don't join the military. And let's talk about the man in uniform. And what is the man in uniform? The man in uniform is always present. See, at some point in your life, you've had an encounter with a man in a uniform. Most of us have had an encounter with a police officer. That is a man in uniform. The way that you handled yourself when you engaged with that officer had a variable impact on how your experience with that man in uniform would have gone. Meaning, like, if you had a mindset that was undisciplined and you could not maintain your emotions, your experience and interaction with that officer was going to be something completely different, way out of the way. So if you chose an emotionally undisciplined reaction to that man in uniform, that man in uniform going to slap some cuffs on you, if provided everything goes as safe as possible. We're not going to talk about if you meet the wrong man in uniform, and then they decide to off you anyway, But we're going to talk about this from a step-by-step perspective, because I want you to understand how many men in uniform exist in anybody's life at any given time, but specifically men. So you have an encounter with an officer who's in uniform that ends up putting cuffs on you for whatever reason. And now you're in the back of the squad car. Then they take you to the station. Both those garage doors come down. The man in uniform gets out the car and picks you out the back seat, takes you and hands you off to another man in uniform that handles your booking. Now he handing you off to the jail personnel. After they book you, they're going to put you in a room and give you a uniform to put on. And it might be orange, green, brown, tan, or whatever uniform it is. You will have on a uniform. And you'll be considered an official inmate at that point. And then the correctional officer, who's in uniform as well, comes to get you after you change into your new uniform as an inmate and puts you in the population with a bunch of other inmates that got the same uniform on as you do. And guess what you still have to do? You still have to listen to another man in uniform, because you don't know the politics of where you are. There's always going to be a man in uniform to tell you what to do. So this fantasy that you can go through life as a YN all your life and not have to listen to nobody is dangerous. It is a fantasy. And that is why I said conscription, because you're going to end up in uniform anyway. At least if you got some benefits, you go out here and do something drastic to cut your life off, your family has some benefits, instead of you having to lean on your family as the village to go bail you out of every situation that you created for yourself. You need training. And shout out to my man, Bren, says, you really think that would be right to subscribe those guys to involuntary service because their parents couldn't get it right? You absolutely right. I do. If their parents can't get it right, who got to deal with it? If their parents can't get it right, who got to deal with it? So, and I say everybody's got to do things that they don't want to do to take care of the people that they're responsible for. People that get hurt from indiscriminate violence didn't sign up for it either. Do you have a better suggestion for a solution? A lot of people got more criticisms than they do critiques. And a criticism it's just one way. I don't like it, so I'm going to talk crazy about it. A critique is, hey, I see the direction you're trying to go. Maybe take this piece of advice, this nugget of information, and adjust your plan with this piece of information. But I see where you're going, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, That's the difference between a critique and a criticism. So what happens here in these types of conversations, a lot of people have more objection than anything, because they really just don't care for solving a problem. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case in this point. I think some people just like to disagree when they come down to social media. And because they like to disagree because it's just social media, we never push the conversation further. So like now, that's why having it publicly, like what I'm doing now, documenting it, is meant to say, hey, we can have a way better conversation about this all together, instead of just thinking that because we disagree that there's actual communication. I care about effective communication. I care about literacy. You know what I'm saying? Really understanding how to read the room, not just being able to read in general, because a lot of people read and then they don't even comprehend what they're reading. They just know how to repeat the words. So at some point, you got to have something to go along with what you have to have a way to substantiate your point of view, outside of just saying, hey, yeah, I like what you said, but instead of just listening to respond all the time. We're at a different level of crisis, man. I don't know, every crisis don't belong to us. because we only deal with people that fit the behavior. But I wanted to make sure that I brought up a lot of these talking points because I care about how it goes. All right. So in this portion of the conversation as well, I brought up a topic that says if a man doesn't have a wife, if a man doesn't have a wife, children, or isn't in charge of other people, how does he validate his ability to lead? All right. Now, this wasn't an affront to any man that's not married. Some men, I felt like, took this conversation in a direction that, parts needed to be discussed because everybody's got an opinion on things. Some folks got a biblical alignment with what they believe leadership is. Some have an alignment that's based off of objective reality, and some just got it off experience, and some got it off of aspirations. And by aspiration, it means what you would like for it to mean, and what does it mean to you. And looking at the various responses, I could tell there was some people that was triggered. They don't necessarily care about anybody else's opinion. But one of the things, a few of the topics, and I just read a few of the inserts that I had in here. I said leadership is about strategy and implementation. It's not about being a dictator. And meaning, like, there's some people that in explanation, they think they're a leader because they're actually just wearing the title, or they're in a physically or they're in a designated role. I think it's more about a role for some people, And so when I said this, put this on the screen. All right. Leadership is about strategy and implementation, not about being a big dictator. So when I said this, I was capturing the fact that there's some people that's going to look like they're in charge because of the role that they're in. But you have to pay attention to the impact they have on other people. And a lot of people don't really understand what I mean by that. Well, put it like this. For everything you see that a man can do, you can also flip it back. Let's say, okay, we'll take the man out and put it on a situation with a woman as the piece. If you could look at a woman and she has children and her children are not well behaved consistently, not just the difference between them just being kids and then not having any discipline at all. You could tell the difference, right? Well, it's the same thing. Like, the mother can be, she's a mother, whether just because she had the kids. Is she a good mother or a bad mother? We don't know. Well, let's look at the kids. Let's look at the behavior of the kids. Does the behavior of the kids tell you if the mother is neglecting the children at all? Of course it does. So their behavior is going to tell you that. So it's about strategy and how she's going about being a mother to her kids and putting them in the best situation possible so they can have a healthy childhood experience and grow into functioning adults, right? Well, same with leadership. It's about strategy and implementation. If you're a leader and you're responsible for something that causes impact and changes other people's lives because of you, then your method of delivery and how you implement what your strategy is going to reflect that. So if everything you do, if you only value leadership on an internal level, I mean, that's cool. I mean, because you still got to have some kind of architecture of how you're going to handle yourself. But ultimately, that's not leadership. That's just personal responsibility. You're just minding your business. It's the same thing when women say that they're alpha female. You're not an alpha without hierarchy. Well, you're not a leader without hierarchy. You're not leading anybody but you. And that's just called being personally responsible. And the next statement was, was you can study the Bible all you want, You can study the Bible all you want, but you still have to harness your emotional discipline to choose the right person to complement your leadership abilities to implement your plan. This is called vision. So you first got to have a plan that's already kind of working, and then you deal with people that help your plan accelerate or enhance whatever it is that you're doing. And you are able to make decisions that hurt people's feelings sometimes because everybody's expectations are different. You can't please everybody. You walk around and you know that every day. You have to be sovereign in your vision about what you need to do to maintain uh, the trajectory to your success. So the Bible is an amazing tool of information, stories, and emotional and sexual discipline, and it gives you a lot of details and consequences, similar to like a lot of y'all probably grew up with Aesop fables. You grew up with the Three Little Pigs, and they all told stories about consequences for choices made. You don't have to go through what everybody else goes through to benefit from making a good decision. You can just look at it and tell if it's advantageous to you or not. But if you don't get to a place where you can allow new information to change your existing opinions about something, that is going to impact your ability to lead. It is. It is. And I ain't just talking about in relationships, I'm talking about across the board, man. Because across the board, you're going to get challenged always. And you're going to have to know when to cut off and when to not explain yourself. And then you're going to be able to tell if the people you explaining yourself to actually care about what you got going on, or they're just more interested they're more interested in investing in disagreeing with you than actually helping you. Some people are there just to be competitive for no reason. People are going to compete with you before they compliment you. I live by that. Come on, man. Keep that in mind. They're going to compete with you before they compliment you. Let's see. If you engage in conflicts without an ability to resolve them peacefully, then you have no leadership skills or ability. You are untrustworthy. Going back to who can't be trusted to lead. People that use violence to solve problems and and from a role of leadership is exactly the behavior that shows you a person is just wearing a title. They're just showing you the version of them that they actually want to be. When the going gets tough, they gotta resort to some level of physical conflict, and that's not healthy. And what it also does, it changes their availability, because at some point, the way that they handle something is going to determine if they can be available or not. You start ending up dealing. You ever dealt with somebody that's always in and out of court? Their availability is always limited. No different than, like a person that has a child care issue and can't come to work on a regular basis. And they might be good at their job when they're there, but then because they always in some sort of inconsistent situation, because the best ability is availability. But if you think that you can live your life solving all your problems with violence, you're going to have some very, very inconsistent availability. All right. So, next, where does a man learn leadership skills if he's alone? That goes back to, like my conversation about the military. See, leadership isn't just, well, you're supposed to be a leader. I saw somebody say men are born leaders. No, they're not. Nobody's born a leader. Nope. You could be born to a leader, but nobody is born a leader. Leadership it has to be cultivated. You have to be trained. You have to go through a series of emotionally rigorous situations. It's like I was one day I was in a sauna, and there was this guy. I talked to him on a regular basis. You know, as when you go to the gym, you see the same people, and we had a conversation about therapy, mental health, and a few other things, and some mentorship centric topics. And you know, there's a lot of people that have not been exposed to anything. They have not had their fears challenged, and they have not put themselves against the sword. And by that I mean they don't have any baseline to really say what they've overcome. Most people have never overcome anything because the majority of people have never been trained. So the conversation I was having with the guy while we were in the sauna, he asked me something about exposure therapy. And I talked to him about it. And, you know, the truth is that most people in general are not going to therapy or not going to any form of counseling. And, you know, that's always going to be the case. But exposure therapy, actually being exposed to something that you're supposed to be scared of, you know, like people that have a fear of clowns or a phobia or something like that. And we sat there and talked about it, and I started sharing stories with him about, you know, my veterans that I counsel. And all of us have experienced being exposed to our own fears or highly chaotic situations. And even if we have PTSD, how we deal with it is we deal with it head on, you know, and recognizing that is important, because when you're trying to lead, that doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means that you don't let fear submit you. Yes, most people, when fear shows up, they use it as a signal to hurt other people. For those of you that may have seen, may or may not have seen Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks' character at some point after they get to this drop zone where plane crash, and you know soldiers are walking through because it's based in World War II. For those of you that never seen the movie, and they were looking for Private Ryan, obviously. It was going through some dog tags, and then when they finally got some information about which direction they needed to go, Tom Hanks was plotting their next azimuth or direction to travel on a map, and his hand was shaking. He was shook, but he was calm in the face, but his hand was shaking. And the other men saw it, but they didn't not trust him. They didn't trust him any less. They didn't trust him any less because they were exposed to the same thing. So the thing is, even in that situation, he wasn't alone. And they still trusted him. If you're by yourself, who audits your leadership? Does it mean, for those of you that feel like you can still be a leader without leading anybody else, I don't agree. If nobody else trusts you, you're not leading anything. Period. You're just being a responsible human being, and you're not being the burden to anybody else. But if you're not leading anyone, if nobody's dependent on your decision making, you're not leading anyone. You're no different than the women that call themselves an alpha female. Every man isn't a leader because every man isn't trained, and every man that's trained still doesn't necessarily make him a good leader. There's a lot of things, but a person with no training at all is definitely, and it's not, doesn't make decisions on behalf of other people other than himself, is no different than just a regular responsible adult. That's it. Don't confuse being responsible with being a good leader, because being responsible is a very, very basic requirement. You owe that to yourself. Leadership, you owe something to other people. Two different things. So let's see here. So the next thing is how does a man that leads recovers from his mistakes without making others carry his burdens? These questions are paramount. So I think a lot about when Cam Newton was in his first 2 years at the Carolina Panthers. And I would always see him out front taking the blame, dealing with the press. And I used to always think, I said, man, where's Ron Rivera? I felt like he used to be to the back, of the situation where I felt like it should have been the coach's place to speak up. But then I had to start thinking about it multidimensionally. It's easy to put the camera on Cam Newton. And it's easy to, it's more lucrative to put the camera on Cam Newton. And like he could admit where he made mistakes. He could admit, things he could have done better individually as a player. And the main thing that he did not do is blame the rest of the team. So a man just got to take ownership of what he's responsible for first. Period. Got to start there. And then if the conversation goes beyond that, then you make it available to other people so they can say what their equity is in the situation. But you take care of your equity first. Don't worry about nobody else. Don't deflect. You wouldn't even accept that from your own kids. You're saying to your kid, hey, before they go to school, you tell them, do what the teacher tell you to do and stay out of trouble and don't follow the crowd. You get a call from the school and the teacher says your child is following the crowd and basically doing everything that you told them not to do before they went to school. You talk to your kid and you say, hey, why are you doing everything I told you not to do before you went to school? Your kid says everybody else was doing it, so you don't go tell them. You probably going to have a problem with avoiding boxing your kid at that point, because that's not an acceptable excuse, because there is no excuse when you already laid down the foundation of expectation. But we let adults make the excuse, well, you don't ever go say anything to them. Shut up. Shut up and deal with what's in front of you and nothing else. Don't worry about nobody else. How about that? Worry about what you're responsible for and not what other people should be paying attention to. If you lack sexual discipline, your leadership is questionable. Yep. If y'all know the rules, that's rule number 5. So it factors in anything, you know what I'm saying? It factors into everything. If you can't control your meat, you can't control your seat. Period. And for those that don't understand, you can't control your seat. You change where you're able to sit when you can't control your meat. Nobody wants you around them or next to them if you're untrustworthy with your meat. It's what it is. Kids, families, and everything get impacted this way. A man cannot lead anyone that doubts him. The person that doubts and questions him are serving 2 internal masters, fear and insecurity. It has to be that personal. They're projected, because how dare they follow someone that they trust 8, 9, 10 out of 10 times, and then the thing that they want to disagree with you about is your personal philosophy, because you said it publicly. And they are mad because, number one, they're not bold enough to lead by it. But number 2, they're more motivated to critique, or they're more motivated to criticize, because like I told you before, more people are going to compete with you before they compliment you. They're going to compete with you before they compliment you. These people serve two masters, man. Fear and insecurity. And you are not responsible for making them feel comfortable. Because if they doubt you, they're not here to listen to you anyway. So why even go that far in the gap? You know what I'm saying, with the situation? Why? Is it even necessary? Because if they're already wired to disagree with you, there's no point. You know, you don't owe them safety. No different than any job. A job has no problem with saying, hey, you don't meet the criteria. We got a probationary period and we're not a good fit. We're going to go ahead and get you up out of there. You got one or two different exchanges with somebody and you already know how far something's going to go. You already know what they own. You know what they're committed to. The time has passed for people going out of their way to convince somebody of your vision. You got your assignment and they got theirs. Respect their assignment and let them get out your way. If you have passion without a plan, you are reckless. You want submission, but you don't have a mission. You are a liability. Like, hey, look, keep this in mind. Originally, we started off with the YN culture conversation. The YN culture doesn't want to incorporate any of this stuff right here. YN culture is crash out culture. There's no problem. There's the problem is the goal in the YN culture. Okay. Being problematic is the YN culture goal. They don't want solutions. The crash out is the solution. Because that culture has no leaders. They're not raised by leaders. They don't want solutions. Leaders are found where solutions are. Keep that in mind. You don't find solutions where the crash outs are. And that's why men that are leaders don't argue. They do not entertain detractors unless they're using them as examples to teach others. Yep. If you are going to have any type of extended engagement with somebody that disagrees with you, start collecting on them. Get ready to use them for content, man. That's it. They're not good enough for anything else. Based on behavior, you don't have to know them character-wise. We're talking about the behavior because everybody has a profile, whether they like it or not. There's an answer for everything, but the leader will make a decision based on what he can implement, control, influence, and accomplish without support. When you have a plan, this is why you don't have to entertain everybody that disagree with you. If what you're trying to do can be accomplished, whether they're paying attention or not, then you don't have to entertain them. They're the ones looking for validation, not you. They are. They need to feel like the way that they're testing you to see if you believe in what you're saying and see if you'll fold. Because they want a spectacle. They want to embarrass people. They want to say you're not as gifted, talented, or smart as you think you are. That's what they're trying to say to you. Because why else would somebody go out of their way to try to dismantle somebody else's well-intended thoughts? It's weird. That it, like, they don't even know they're haters. See, most people that aren't leaders, most people that think that they're leaders, but they limit themselves to this type of behavior, how they treat other people, intellectual property, it's really just jealousy. It's really them just let you know that I watch you all the time because I'm looking for a opportunity to disagree with you publicly because I want attention. That's really what it is, man. Like, as smug as that sounds, it's just the truth. You have to sit back and say, well, why would they care so much about my opinion? And if my opinion is that valuable to them, then how much other stuff are they really paying attention to about you? Keep that in mind, man. Men should never be led by a woman's fear. He's led by his autonomous obligations that exist with or without her. Yep. Because a man's resilience should be the example that she should observe to trust that his plan is in alignment with his example of leadership. You got to walk it like you talk it. And if you make a mistake, you own it. Because you can't demand accountability from anyone if you're not willing to stay in line with what you practice. It's just it. So, and then the other part was going back to, well, people saying, well, you could judge a man to be able to lead by how he carries himself and all that stuff, right? And it's actually proven the point that even if you are not attached to someone, but you can be observed, someone's still auditing you based on your potential. Until they're with you, they can't audit you. They can't audit you by behavior completely unless you have some sort of organic connection with them. So if your authority cannot be audited, you are not leading anything. Meaning, if nobody that's connected to you, that's a recipient of your guidance, behavior, and your plan, if they can't say, ask for clarity or look for ways to be a better, if you don't have anybody asking you for better guidance, then what are you leading? So it's a lot of people that's single that think that they're a leader because they're single, but you can't be both. And what I mean by that is, in a romantic sense, that's true. But I think a lot of people are overlapping being just a responsible individual being a leader. Because if nobody's benefiting from what you do, then who are you leading? And don't get me, and stop saying lead yourself. You're just being a responsible adult. True leadership negates doubt. Passionate pessimism inspires insecurity. You are not a leader if you inspire doubt and fear. You are a prosperity preacher if fear is your tool. Yes. Come on. You should be saying facts. From a leadership perspective, you should be just giving cold hard facts with no personal with no personal hate mixed into it. You're just talking about the truth. You're not speculating for the minority in the situation. You're dealing with the 51%, the majority rule, not half and half. Because if you behave a certain way 80% of the time, then you should expect outcomes that reflect the 80% of your behavior. So leadership is intentional, and it is very important that it's led. It's important to approach it with a positive attitude. Because if you approach it with a pessimistic attitude, then it's going to be associated with fear, emotional undiscipline, poor sexual conduct, victim blaming, Not even victim blame, just victimhood. None of the behaviors that we need that make us feel safe. No fear. No fear. Fear cannot be part of the way you administer your leadership. At that point, you're just being a dictator. If you have no authority, you're not leading anything. Do we really need to expand on that? Like, seriously. If you have nobody that is that you're responsible for administering guidance to, what are you leading? Stop saying yourself. Let's see. Leadership comes through training and discipline. What training and discipline do you have? So, some of you can be leaders in anybody can be a leader if that they have a skill set that they can teach to somebody else. But somebody has to receive what you're saying. There has to be someone else in the equation. If you're by yourself and nobody receives anything from you, do you even exist? If you have no impact and no influence, then who's following you? You don't exist to people that you don't have an impact or influence with. So if nobody can receive your experience and your teachings, then what are you leading? Let's see. If you're focused on leadership, you'll have more solutions to offer than insults based on the current environment and situations. Yep. If you deal with what's in front of you, and if it's a situation that requires immediate problem solving, you don't have time to complain. You don't have time to judge people negatively. And you don't have time to be malicious toward anyone. So that's why when you can look up and see that there are some people that are very, very committed to being malicious to people that actually help others, they don't have any plan. They're not trustworthy. You can't trust them. Who can't be trusted? People that shame folks that help people cannot be trusted. People that shame people that are looking for solutions, honestly, cannot be trusted. Like, you don't talk crazy to someone that's obese that's at the gym. They're at the gym. They're working. Let them get through what they got to get through. Be happy that they're in there working on themselves. And most times the people that got the most to say, they can't teach anybody anything. That's why I say you don't even have to pay them any attention. Y'all, people got to learn how to ignore. Learn how to ignore. And you could teach. If you have the answer for that person that you're ignoring, then you can also teach it. Especially if it's coming from a good place, because again, people are wired to compete with you, not compliment. So you got to keep that in mind. Men without leadership resources make excuses and suggestions. Leaders have internal discernment and emotional discipline to make necessary choices on behalf of the people he's responsible for, regardless of their dislike. See, when you make excuses why you can't do something, it's because you really just don't want to. You'll discuss your limitations, but if you really want to do it, you'll say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm successful when I do this because I'm not certain about it. Tell me what I need to do to be successful. And the same people that like making excuses love making suggestions. And the suggestion usually has nothing to do with them doing it. Because I live by this. You can't have the least amount of resources and think you can make the rules. Period. If you ain't in a position to change the way something's executed, then don't make suggestions. Ask questions. Ask questions about how you can help them get to their goal. You know what I'm saying? Because if you cannot pass reasonable judgment, you can't lead anything. You could just tell. If anytime somebody's ask you a question and you get defensive about the question, you're leading from fear. You're supposed to be able to be challenged. And the challenge is not even from the person. It's about you refining your level of effective communication. Because see, some people are, like I said, they're gonna compete with you before they compliment you. Some people are the emotionally undisciplined people are wired to compete with you first before they compliment you. They're transactional. So they're going to intentionally misunderstand what you tell them sometimes. This is why you have to let them go. They're going to intentionally misinterpret what you said, and it's very manipulative behavior. And they're going to put other people in jeopardy, including you, and whatever your mission is, and whatever that looks like. There's no room for them. That is the entire YN culture. You're going to make a suggestion or offer a consult on something, and they're going to tell you every reason why it can't work. Instead of saying, well, these are our obstacles. What did you suggest, or how can you help us develop a way that can get positive returns for our effort? And then that's when you have to learn a cold hard reality. And that's what this is really about too. The cold reality is that most men are not leaders. They're not. It is a very, very small pool. And that pool is meant to be small. It just ain't enough room. Because who gonna do the work when it come down to it? And then the last 4 or 5 years, everybody been a boss with no workers. Somebody got to do the work. So everything is playing its way out the way it should be played out. Because as far as men are concerned, you out here by yourself, man. You can't blame nobody. And ain't nobody coming to save you. I know we say these things all the time. Part of the reason why you have to accept those realities is that in the back of your mind, you know that after a certain period of trying to help people that can't help you, you know that this can't go on any further. And despite whatever is said on social media, you got to have a literacy about your regular environment. Yep. And you got to get yourself out of your own problems. Nobody that you're going to meet is the answer to your problem. Even if you're in a relationship, your problem is still your problem, and it's not the other person's to deal with. Your moods that come from your problem is your problem, because you would still have that same issue whether you were with them or not. So the cold reality is that most men aren't leaders, because the men that fit this statement don't solve their own problems. You cannot lead anything if you don't solve your own problem. And that is just the truth. I hope you guys like the video. Like, share, and subscribe. And, keep in mind that you are what you do. And if you do that thing 80% of the time, then that's what you are. So this has been another episode of Beyond the Algorithm. Check the caption and description. Like, share, and subscribe. Go get the book, Accountable Masculinity. Follow me on YouTube. Join the Facebook group. And I'm out.